My wife's nudity photos were submitted to AP, and I was caught at the scene. Part 1. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another story about Reddit cheating. Please click the subscribe button and the notification bell before we begin so you don't miss another cheating story. On Easter Sunday, I, 28M, discovered evidence that my wife, 27F, was having an affair. I confronted her with overwhelming evidence the next day. I left without speaking to her and have no intention of doing so. We're getting divorced. But, as profoundly broken as I am, I feel like even that is a futile gesture. My wife and I enjoyed what I considered to be the ideal relationship. We were close friends who appeared to help each other in a variety of ways. We grew up together and dated from our senior year of high school through our freshman year of college. We were each other's first sexual attraction on a physical level. We were both students at the same institution, majoring in different professions, and married 2 years after graduation. To be closer to our families, we relocated to a major city near our hometown. She found a job teaching a high-profile private school, which she liked, and I got a position as an engineer with a good pay and benefits. We made a lot of money together, therefore we spent a lot of time together. We went on a journey. We went out to eat a lot, and every night seemed like a date. Even in a group of friends, the two of us were always together. They could have used our goofy love grins as the sample shot in picture frames for sale because we were so delighted. Our sex life had always been fantastic. For us, a dry spell was defined as less than 4 times a week. In general, we had a wonderful life. At least, that's what I assumed. I believe we had a wonderful life together, but I've realized it was all a lie. We were hoping to start a family as soon as possible. This caught me completely off guard. I can't seem to stop weeping. I had hoped to be a fath, or one day, but it's now impossible. We were supposed to help at our church hide Easter eggs on the property for youngsters to locate later on Easter morning at the crack of dawn. Before heading to the church, we got up and threw on some clothes without showering. Later that day, we groggily assisted in the hiding of obvious eggs for the small children and more secretive eggs for the older ones. My wife snapped a lot of pictures of us and other members of the congregation with her phone. Before driving home, we all had coffee and donuts while discussing. I drove to the church, but my wife drove us back home. When we returned, she said she was going back to bed for a few hours. Because my father was a Baylor alumnus, I wanted to preview the college basketball championship game the next night. We brought my wife's iPad with us, which I utilized like it was my own the entire time. I hadn't expected to see anything, and she hadn't expected to show me anything either. I'm not particularly tech-savvy. As a result, I'm still not sure what happened. However, as we approached the house, I was reading an article. A symbol appeared in the lower right corner that said something about images, and then picture after picture appeared, one on top of the other. I'm not sure if my wife's phone or our Wi-Fi was syncing to the iPad. I'm at a loss once more. I continued reading after noticing the photos were the same ones my wife had taken minutes before outside the church. Suddenly, a couple photographs appeared on the screen that appeared to contain nudity, which was out of character for my wife. To go back, I tried tapping on the photographs, but it seemed as if the photos weren't on the iPad at all. It just showed me each one for a fraction of a second. I opened the photo file on the iPad, but there was nothing remotely sexual on the device. Despite the fact that I'd seen the images taken at the church flash by, I realized none of them were on the iPad. As she returned to BD, my wife walked into the kitchen and collected a bottle of water to take with her. As I watched her walk up the stairs, I had the distinct impression that she was concealing something from me for the first time in our relationship's history. I looked through every file on the iPad in the hopes of finding what I'd seen, but I gradually learned that checking my wife's phone would help me relax. I went upstairs and saw her soundly sleeping in our bed. I snatched her phone from the charging station and carried it into our bathroom. We never had a phone policy that was either open or closed. With nothing to hide, we merely utilized each other's equipment at will. My heart nearly stopped when I discovered her passcode had been altered. I tried it several times at various rates. It had undoubtedly been altered. My eyes welled up with tears as I realized that my wife was most likely concealing something from me. It was a sign that there was something I needed to know that I didn't know about. I returned to her room and plugged her phone back into the charger. Part of me wanted to pretend I was hallucinating or that I had merely imagined seeing something risque, but my mind was deceiving me. I had imagined myself realizing that what I had seen was not carnal and laughing over what I believed it was. But it was the passcode that grabbed me. I attempted to be as normal as possible. She knew me better than anyone, so it was difficult to keep all of my feelings bottled up while remaining undetected. However, I heard her text alert late that afternoon as she was in the kitchen. I came around the corner just in time to watch her type in a whole new code. As a result, I realized I wasn't absolutely insane. I took her phone into the bathroom again later that night after she'd gone to bed. I typed in the new code and went to her photo folder. To my astonishment, there was no shot that even came close to depicting nudity. I even found the images she'd taken that morning at church. There was nothing pornographic among them. I was going to close the app when I decided to hunt for images that had been erased. To my amazement, I discovered 2 naked and partially naked images of my wife, as well as a naked photo of someone other than myself. I quickly sent all 3 photographs to myself, then deleted both the text and the photos. I returned my wife's phone to the holder, walked downstairs to make less noise, and puked like I'd been given IPAC. I'd never seen either of my wife's photos before. That wasn't her style, and it wasn't something I wanted. I could always have her to myself when the time arose, and I already knew how stunning she was in her underwear. We just had the feeling that photographs like those could come back to haunt individuals in the future. We had no need to share our intimacy with the world because she and I were too linked as one, so I reasoned. I had no idea who the man in the photo was. Even though I had no idea who he was or if my wife knew him in any way, I was enraged when I saw it. After I stopped puking, I collapsed on the floor and sobbed like a small child. I had never sobbed so hard in my life, but I just felt something wasn't right. Before I had to get up to go to work, I slept for a few hours next to my wife. While I studied how to recover text from a phone, every project I was working on was put on hold. As it turned out, because our plan was in my name through my employer, I had access to every text message and photo exchanged. To cut a long tale short, I was able to recover body messages, selfies, and yes, even photos and video from the same device. I could say I puked again, but it was only dry heaving. At 2 a.m., I'd finished the last item I could throw up. I walked down to my car and sobbed so hard that my eyes bled. I couldn't believe what I was going through was true, but I realized right away that my relationship with my wife, my greatest friend, was over and that every dream I had vanished. I let out wild fury shouts. I was relieved she wasn't present when I made my discovery. I had no idea what I was capable of, and I didn't want her to see me in that light. I was at a loss for what to do, where to go, or who to call. I was in shock, and the last person I'd turned to in that situation was the person who had ruined me. I stopped crying and sat in a trance, unsure of what to do, but aware that I didn't want to do anything. I knew that what had begun as an unproductive morning would end up being an unproductive day. I returned to work, visited with each team member about the company project we were working on, and then left. I didn't want to look at my wife, therefore I had no intention of confronting her at her school. I basically drove around in shock for hours. I moved from tears to wrath to tears to rage to tears 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 to the proof was strong and unmistakable. I considered emailing all of the material I gathered to her and both of our families, then driving my car off a cliff. I didn't want to live any longer, and I certainly didn't want to cope with the confrontation that would put an end to our marriage for good. Thank you for viewing, and be sure to check out our other infidelity stories videos.